I wasn't expecting to make another video on a runaway train so soon, but recommendations are always welcomed. Well, as long as I can find a way to fit them in the schedule, you know? I'll just move this here, and we're good. Unstoppable is a movie inspired by true events that was fascinating to learn about. It takes inspiration from a 2001 runaway train that the news stations cutely called the Crazy Eights. I didn't know what the movie was about aside from what I guessed was an unstoppable train based on the train on the cover art and, you know, the name. But then as soon as I read inspired by true events, I was intrigued. I immediately thought to myself, no way, it can't be. I was naive enough to assume that this movie was a modern retelling of the 1962 train incident that was dramatized in 1985's Runaway Train. Because, you know, there's never been any other railroad disaster in history for movies to get inspiration from. But no, this movie was inspired from a fairly recent event that took place in 2001. Here's that story. In May 15, 2001, an unnamed engineer was in the train yard changing locomotive CSX 8888 to a different track for departure when he noticed a misaligned switch up ahead. Even though the train was moving slow, he knew he wouldn't be able to stop the 47 freight cars in time. His plan is to jump out, switch it, and jump back in. Easy. Before doing so, he applied the independent air brakes and attempted to apply the dynamic brakes and unfortunately set the thing to full throttle. Believing he set the brakes properly, he jumped off. Noticing that the train was pulling away, the engineer tried jumping back in but slipped and was dragged for about 80 feet. The unmanned train, which also carried hazardous material, accelerated on by. Within minutes, the authorities and upper management were alerted to this issue. This gave law enforcement enough time to move quickly and block off all railroad crossings. The first order of business was stopping the train. The earliest idea attempted was to derail the train before it caused any serious injury. Unfortunately, the derailers failed as the train just barreled straight through them. Later in a town downs away, a police officer tried shooting at the train to stop it. The idea was to hit the fuel cutoff button with the bullets in order to starve the engine. However, not only did he miss, but the off button needed to be pressed down for a number of seconds for it to work.
Various attempts were made to try and stop it, including a sheriff's deputy firing shots at the gas tank to try and drain the fuel. That didn't work.
I used a buckshot round to attempt to engage the fuel safety shutoff switch.
We were aiming to disable it by firing shotgun rounds at a fuel stop safety switch.
Turns out the guy who let the train get loose in the first place called Sergeant Glenn with a direct order. Shoot to kill.
And so, some shots were fired.
Now what? There was another engine traveling upstream that had been moved from the main track to a siding in order to avoid a collision. While they waited, dispatch urged them to uncouple their load and be prepared to chase after it in hopes of linking to it and stopping it with their brakes. And that's what they did. The unmanned train whizzed past them and they began giving chase. This third attempt proved successful as the chasing engine finally caught up and slowed it down to 11 miles per hour just south of Kenton. At this low speed, an engineer quickly hopped on board and finally applied the proper brakes. This entire ordeal lasted a whole 2 hours.
The train rolled down the tracks late this afternoon for miles with absolutely nobody in control. It finally came to a dramatic stop near the city of Kenton, Ohio. Even worse, the train was known to be carrying combustible materials.
Finally, a dramatic rescue. Another engine was brought in from behind and hooked onto the train to slow it down. Then watch the lower left corner of your screen. An engineer was able to jump onto the locomotive and apply the brakes.
This true tale of heroism was captured in 2004 by Mark Bomback in the script originally titled Runaway Train. In various interviews, it seemed like Denzel Washington came across the script first and then forwarded it to director Tony Scott. After reading it, they both found it interesting enough to sign on, to which it marked their 5th collaboration together. Tony Scott took it a step further and spent time at a rail yard learning about trains and the lifestyle that surrounds them.
Before I commit to every movie, I read the script and I'm going to spend time in the real world. So I went down to Pennsylvania and spent a week there and familiarized myself with the world of railroaders and I found role models for the guys in there. And Chris's character changed because you know, from the script I saw was someone's blue collar working class, and then I went and met the guys over there, and actually Denzel said, you know, I think it'd be a great chemistry between me and Chris, you know, and then one of the guys I met with was what I call a pretty boy who got the job because of nepotism. That was all fact. So we brought that, we put that in the script, and then Denzel's, and one of the guys we met, his daughters worked at Hooters, you know, but all that stuff you can't, it's hard to conjure up.
Couldn't make that up.
He couldn't make it up.
He used the personal anecdotes of the engineers to sculpt the backstories of our leads. All these new additions to the script eventually led it to be changed from the original title Runaway Train to Unstoppable. With all the pieces in place, production gradually moved forward. Although there was some friction between the studio and the crew over budget cuts and contractual obligations, the issues were eventually resolved, allowing production to proceed smoothly. The movie was ultimately released on November 12, 2010, debuting second in the box office. In that opening weekend, it launched with $22 million behind Megamind and ahead of due date. In the domestic markets, it ultimately brought in $81 million, and the international markets brought in $86 million for a worldwide total of $167 million. The film itself was rated PG-13 for sequences of action and peril and some language. It has a reasonable runtime of 98 minutes, and it falls under the action, disaster, and thriller genres. In total, IMDb has a score at a 6.8 out of 10, Metacritic at a 69, Letterboxd 3.3 out of 5, and Rotten Tomatoes has the critics at an 87% and the audience at a 72%. Jeremy Jahns did review this movie, and he stated that,
I would say of the Tony Scott movies of the past decade or even longer, this is my favorite one, definitely. Now, I don't want to look like I'm giving away awesome-taculars, but to say it's Tony Scott's best movie of the past decade or more and then not give him an awesome-tacular makes it look like the best he can ever do is not awesome-tacular. And I'm just not that douchey. So I would say Unstoppable is awesome-tacular. So if there is a movie to watch this weekend, I would say Unstoppable is definitely it.
Additionally, Roger Ebert wrote in his review that, in terms of sheer craftsmanship, this is a superb film. The photography and sound here are very effective. We are spellbound. To focus on the sound quote, he is 100% correct. So much so that Unstoppable was nominated for an Oscar that year for Best Sound Design. Unfortunately, competition that year was fierce. Denzel Washington was born on December 28, 1954 in Mount Vernon, New York. Denzel plays the role of Frank, a seasoned conductor tasked with bringing on board the new hire when the train becomes a runaway. Prior to Unstoppable, he was in The Taking of Pelham 123 in 2009 and The Book of Eli in 2010. Afterwards, in 2012, he was in both Safe House and Flight, to which he got nominated for Best Lead Actor at the Academy Awards. Chris Pine was born on August 26, 1980 in LA. Chris takes on the role of Will, the new hire whose first day on the job is to stop the runaway train. Prior to Unstoppable, he was in Star Trek and Carriers, both in 2009. Afterwards, he was in Celeste and Jesse Forever and This Means War, both released in 2012. Rosario Dawson was born on May 8, 1979 in New York, New York. Rosario plays the role of Connie, the yardmaster that coordinates all the efforts from the control center. Prior to Unstoppable, she was in 7 Pounds in 2008 and Percy Jackson and the Olympians, The Lightning Thief in 2010. Afterwards, in 2011, she was in both Girl Walks Into a Bar and Zookeeper. Director Tony Scott was born on June 21, 1944 in North Shields, UK and passed on August 19, 2012. Unstoppable was his last film directed. In the years leading up to it, he directed Man on Fire in 2004, Domino in 2005, Deja Vu in 2006, and The Taking of Pelham 123 in 2009. Finally, if you've seen any of the movies I mentioned throughout this video, let me know. I'm curious to see which ones have a following. If not, enjoy this mini montage of actors from this film that work together elsewhere.
Put your hands up. Put them up. Put them up. Give me a gun.
I don't have a gun.
They don't have guns. They're not armed. Okay. All right. Put your hands down. Sit down.
And what is the Rev gonna do after high school?
I don't know. Go to college and all that, I guess.
What about you? You gonna go to college?
Oh, not me, Coach. I ain't a brainiac like Rev.
Think you got a future in football?
Oh, heck no. I just figure if I gotta be in school, I might as well hit some people while I'm at it.
All right, I like that.
Is that a fucking Bible?
Hey, the holy fucking Bible, son.
The fuck kind of songbird Jesus freak dealers you bring me to?
What the fuck?
Can I talk to you for a minute?
Oh, yeah.